Our next talk, our fourth talk, is Chris Barrington Brown from Cunning. Chris, let me find you. There you are. Let me unmute you. Okay, can you share your screen, please?
Okay, have you got that?
Very nice, very nice.
Great. Hello, everybody. Chris Barrington Brown from the bizarrely named Cunning Running software. I'm going to try and tell you a little bit about some of the work we do with our counterterrorism and defence. Obviously, some of it is classified, so I can't talk about it, but I will tell you what I can. We've been around for a reasonable amount of time. We started, or my first program was an orienteering simulation, Cunning Running being a bit of a giveaway. We're now 14 people working out of Romsey near Southampton. And I should say that very close to the Ordnance Survey, and since I see the MD of the Ordnance Survey is one of the listeners, I need to shout out and say their wonderful data is in there somewhere. We turn over about £1 million a year, and we're focused on defence and counter-terrorism, but also, for strange reasons, high-risk missing persons search. So we start off with a whole load of mapping. Our main problem is that our users, our worst use case is a corporal sitting in a trench in Afghanistan. He's got no internet, he's got no connectivity or anything. So all of his mapping and all of the processing needs to be done on the box in front of him. So we supply him with a whole load of topographic maps at different scales, aerial imagery. In this case, it's 25 centimetre, but it's whatever we can get hold of. Height data is very important. This is some blue sky 2-metre resolution digital surface model. We also have a 5-metre DTM as well. And then, of course, all the vector data as well, so we can ask questions of the data. So the first thing that we're trying to do is work out where weapons can be fired against various targets, whether those be important VIPs or critical national infrastructure, crowded places or whatever, or aircraft. So we started with aircraft, and this is a MANPADS footprint, man-portable air defence systems. So missiles that you fire from your shoulder up against an aircraft. I have to tell you that all of the screenshots you're going to see are unclassified, so don't go out there with your MANPADS and try and use them against that particular aircraft at that particular time. There, for example, you can see the sort of starting point that a policeman would look at when he was trying to defend Southampton Airport. Where can weapons be used against the flight paths? Where are the most likely hotspots? And storing data about those so that they can then go and patrol them or mitigate them in some other way. We're also interested in mortars. These are places that you could fire an Irish IRA Mark 6 mortar against Buckingham Palace. And this is taking into account the vegetation that's there. Sorry, that's ignoring the vegetation. But if you need to have line of sight and the vegetation would prevent you from doing that, then we can also take that into account using the vector data. And then you can see there are very few places, but what might be interesting is that there are still some places up here which you might otherwise ignore. Sniper footprints, we've got the Queen driving down to Horse Guards to see Trooping of the Colour, and this is where she can be shot from as she drives. And it takes into account things like crossing rates, how fast the car's going, how well the weapon is going to be able to cope against a crossing target, and so on. And then we also do sensor planning. This was some work we were doing for a company that was putting long-range cameras onto the Channel coast to look for migrant boats coming across from France. And it shows you where your dead ground is and where you're going to get overlap from multiple sensors. We also do things like incident response planning. So here we're worried about the air traffic control centre at Swanwick, and our software will help the user work through all the questions he needs to answer to turn out an incident response plan. And I have to say that although this says it's official sensitive, it isn't. But here are the sort of things that will be churned out and then helped and maintained by the user and also by the police who look after that particular site. We also do search. and I can't, of course, confirm or deny that we had anything to do with the Novichok attack, but luckily there were some policemen looking for Novichok, and they happened to have one of our laptops with a Cunning running logo on the side of it. So it's possible that they were actually using it for Novichok. We're also looking for high-risk missing persons. There is a data set known as iFind, which is produced by the National Missing Persons Bureau, which tells you where people are likely to be found. These are children, dementia, depressives, who are likely to come to harm, and it will tell you where they're likely to come to harm. So in this case, we've got woodland and water, so we can very quickly, using the vector data, the place last seen, the data set has got how far people travel within a certain time, find me all of the woodland and all of the water within that, and then churn out search task sheets, which include maps, diagrams, aerial photographs, a picture of the missing person, and so on. The police search advisor can give that to the teams, who are normally civilians or other police people, to go out and look for that particular person. It's also a real pain for the police search advisor to document all of this, and so we've also built an automatic document production facility so that it logs what they've done, what decisions they made, why they made them, with screenshots and so on, and then turns it out automatically into what they call the search strategy. But if this becomes a recovery rather than a rescue, then at the coroner's court, they've got a record of all the decisions they made, why they made them, and what basis they made them on. We're also quite involved in counter-drone work, both to assess where drones are likely to be flown from, so where the pilots might be, and also whereabouts you want to put your counter-drone facilities, trackers, detectors, and effectors. Here, for example, is a simple a diagram of where a drone can be flown over Southampton Airport, where the pilot is going to stay within the law, and here's one where they're not going to stay within the law because although the rules say they can't have it more than 500 meters away from them, they may be able to control it beyond technical line of sight. So this will also work out where those are. One of the big problems in sighting counter-drone equipment is finding flat areas that are elevated. So our software will go through and use the underlying height data, and we'll find all the places which have got more than a certain square meterage or more than a certain amount above the ground and have less than a certain amount of slope. And so different types of equipment have different characteristics. So rather than going to a new place like an airport completely blind, we can rapidly find the top 20 places where you might like to look first to see where your counter-drone equipment could be placed. And then once you've placed it, this will give you the sort of coverage that you're going to get. Those arcs are all changeable by the type of equipment that you're using, and all the ranges can be changed depending on what type of equipment you're using. And so on. So obviously I'm not going to show you real ones, but that's the sort of thing that we would do. You can also try and work out where pilots are. So if you know where the drone has been seen and you make some assumptions about how far away the pilot is likely to be, you can narrow down, and we assume they're also outside the fence. We can assume that the most likely places they'll be are these slightly darker areas here. But they are technically able to do it from all of the grey areas around here. So that's that. The techie geek stuff, we used to use Esri's Arc Engine and desktop, but in our move to 64-bit, we've now gone to using raw GDAL. We still use Esri Kit for some of the support applications, but we've moved to 64-bit Esri runtime. We used to use Esri's file GDB, but we now use GeoPackages as it's more portable and easier to manage. If the security allows it, we can go to web services such as ArcGIS Online or Google Maps, but most of our users aren't allowed to attach to the internet for security reasons, but those who are can use those facilities if they need them. We're now 64-bit and SQL Server with a backend. For those of you who've used Safe Software's FME, we also embed FME objects inside our software to do various bits and pieces. And as I said right at the beginning, because our use case doesn't allow us to do what the modern architecture would suggest, which is do all your processing in the cloud and just have a thin client to display the answers, we can't do that. So we are absolutely a big, thick client, although we can use the internet if it's available. From a business side of things, this is in service with all those countries listed there. Not all of them for the military and not all of them for civilian, and some for both. We license the software either for a point, such as an airport or a nuclear power station or whatever, for an area such as a country. On most of our military customers, it can work anywhere in the world. And we've also moved, we still have some customers who are on perpetual plus maintenance, but now increasingly people are either leasing by the year, or we provide the whole system, hardware, software, mapping, consultancy, training, the lot, soup to nuts. So that's my contact details if anybody wants to talk more about it. But within limits of security, I hope you found that interesting. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chris. That certainly interested me. So I guess, well, one question would be, how do you advertise your business? How do you get new customers?
An awful lot of it is done by word of mouth. So, for example, a policeman in the UK introduced us to the Transportation Security Administration in the States, who introduced us to the Australian Federal Police, who introduced us to the Royal Australian Air Force, who said, oh yeah, we vaguely heard from the RAF that they were using something, and so the circle is then complete. And so word of mouth is a big thing. Also, it's a very closed world. People talk to each other, and they know what's going on. If you know what you're looking for, you can find us. We're not hidden on the web. We might not tell everybody exactly what we do, and we won't tell everything that we do, but enough to start a conversation.
Okay, thanks a lot, Chris. Thanks very much. Ed, handing back to you.